You have likely felt it since you were a child. A subtle, vibrating dissonance between you and the world around you. You were the child that everyone praised, told that you were wise beyond your years, so mature and so responsible. But that maturity wasn't earned through natural development. It was stolen from the childhood you should have had. Whatever the circumstances, you had to learn to speak like an adult, think like an adult, and comfort like an adult. Underneath that performance, there was a child who never got to be reckless, a child who never really got to be a child. So, while other children were playing in the sandbox, you were watching the teachers, wondering why they looked so tired, or thinking about where life went after death. Now, as an adult, you might find yourself sitting at a dinner party or a workplace meeting, watching people's mouths move. They are discussing the weather or the latest gossip, and you are nodding and smiling, performing the role of an engaged human being. But inside, your mind is screaming. This doesn't happen simply because you are introverted. It is a fundamental frequency mismatch. You are living life on a different timeline than everyone else. Psychology offers a powerful explanation for this isolation. In some cases, this stems from parentification, a dynamic where you were forced to become the emotional caregiver for the adults around you. You learned to read a room before you spoke, mastering micro-expressions and tone shifts because your safety depended on predicting adult emotions. This forged a hyper-vigilant empathy within you. This early survival mechanism birthed another deeply ingrained trait, a toxic form of hyper-independence. You do not ask for help, not because you are truly self-sufficient, but because somewhere deep in your psychology you learned that needing someone is dangerous and that vulnerability equals abandonment. When you were the child holding your environment together, asking for support simply wasn't an option. The tragedy here is that you are not actually independent. You are isolated. True independence means you possess the ability to choose to rely on others. You don't feel you have that choice because your formative years taught you that adults aren't safe, that support is conditional, and that you are fundamentally on your own. So, you built walls so high that even you cannot see over them anymore. Society constantly celebrates you for this. People look at you and say, "Look how strong you are. Look how you never need anything." But psychology calls this avoidant attachment, dressed as strength. Strength without softness isn't strength at all. It is armor that has fused to your skin. You have become the monolithic pillar that everyone else leans on, but you allow yourself to lean on no one. Because your childhood needs were consistently violated and your feelings were treated as inconvenient, your boundaries today are wrapped in guilt. Even now, saying no feels like a betrayal. Taking space feels selfish, and prioritizing yourself feels like abandonment. You learned early on to shrink, to accommodate, and to make yourself small enough that maybe you would be worth keeping. This creates what psychology calls boundary confusion. You genuinely cannot tell where you end and other people begin. You absorb their moods, their problems, and their responsibilities, and then you deeply resent them for it, even though you never actually said no. But you must understand that boundaries aren't walls, and they aren't rejection. They are the sacred space where you finally get to exist without performing, without fixing, and without disappearing. Learning to hold them without guilt is one of the hardest things you will ever do, but it is the only way you stop living in survival mode. In other cases, you were simply born with asynchronous development, meaning your cognitive and emotional awareness vastly outpaced your biological age and your social environment. You became a traveler who arrived at the destination before the journey even began. You are what Carl Jung would call an old soul. As an old soul, your consciousness is not a blank slate. It carries echoes, fragments, and invisible imprints from far beyond the visible span of a single lifetime. Because of this, you carry a kind of quiet sadness, a homesickness for something you have never seen in this life, but somehow remember. You feel a quiet exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical energy, a weariness that comes from having seen too much and having carried invisible burdens. The term old soul is often thrown around as a compliment, but the result is not always a romantic idea of wisdom. Often, it is a deep, aching exhaustion. In Jungian psychology, the archetype of the Senex, the wise old soul, represents foresight and order, but its shadow side is melancholy and heaviness. If you possess this energy, you are prone to existential depression, which is not a chemical imbalance, but rather the depression of insight. While your peers are protected by optimism bias, the healthy delusion that everything will work out, you possess depressive realism. You are running the probabilities and seeing the flaws. You are the lookout on the Titanic who sees the iceberg while everyone else is dancing in the ballroom. And when you try to warn them, you are simply labelled a pessimist. You are sad because you are one of the few people actually paying attention, rather than choosing the comfort of delusion. The primary psychological trait you carry is hyper-intuitive pattern recognition. Most people process life linearly. A happens, then B happens, and then they react to B. Your mind, however, processes life cyclically and predictively. You are constantly running high-speed data processing based on emotional archetypes. While your peers are still arguing about the surface symptoms of a problem, whether it is a workplace dynamic or a broken relationship, you have already identified the root cause and the most likely outcomes. Psychologically, this creates a state of chronic anticipatory anhedonia. You often cannot enjoy the present moment because your mind has already fast-forwarded to the inevitable end, the breakup, the boredom, the decay. It is like watching a movie where you already know the twist, while everyone around you is genuinely gasping at the screen. You are living in the future of the conversation while everyone else is stuck in the present, constantly buffering and waiting for their understanding to arrive. And in that gap, that excruciating pause between your thought and their realization, a heavy loneliness festers. To survive in a world built for speed and surfaces, you face the forced choice dilemma. The excruciating daily choice between honoring your own potential or dumbing yourself down to secure social acceptance. Most often, you choose to mask, becoming an excellent social chameleon. You create a false, agreeable avatar to navigate the world for you. The avatar laughs at the bad jokes and feigns interest in the mundane, but the real you retreats further inward. This is why you feel lonely, even when surrounded by friends, because they aren't friends with you, they are friends with the avatar. Because you understand human psychology on a level that cannot be taught, because you had to live it to survive, you have become a translator of human suffering. You know exactly what it looks like when someone is pretending to be fine, and you hear the quiet cries for help that no one else hears. This makes you deeply, quietly powerful, but it also creates a devastating trap. You become an emotional archaeologist for every broken person who crosses your path. You constantly dig to understand their trauma, easily seeing the hurt child inside every broken adult. The cruel tragedy of this role is that while you are so busy holding everyone else's pain like it is your own, you completely forget to witness yourself. You spend your life trying to understand and save everyone else, but you forget to finally be the person who shows up for the child you were. This intense isolation inevitably bleeds into your romantic life. You approach relationships with a kind of heavy reverence and caution. People might think you are cold or guarded, but you are slow to open up simply because you carry an unconscious memory of what true connection actually costs. For you, love is not a fun distraction or an escape. It is a brutal, necessary mirror. Because you seek depth over distraction, you are completely unimpressed by smooth words or performative gestures. Instead, you are looking for actions. You are looking for an energy and a sincerity that can survive silence and distance. You understand that true intimacy demands radical vulnerability and surrender, so you refuse to settle for shallow dynamics. You would rather endure the loneliness of waiting for someone who can meet you in the deep end than compromise your spirit by pretending to be satisfied in the shallows. So, how do you survive this relentless, aching exhaustion? First, you must stop waiting for the world to catch up to you, because it won't. You must accept the statistical reality of your existence. If you are in the top 2% of intelligence or emotional depth, the vast majority of people you meet will not be able to meet you where you live. You have to stop trying to turn your current peers into your intellectual equals, which is like getting angry at a cat for not understanding calculus. Instead, you must ruthlessly curate your circle and look for intellectual intimacy, the relief of speaking in shorthand with other outliers. Until you find them, you must learn to make peace with the solitude. Solitude is the price of admission for a mind that wants to travel far. You are not antisocial, you are a preserver of your own energy. Your loneliness is not proof that you are lost. It is simply a psychological reality you must learn to work with. Moving forward, your guideline is radical acceptance. You have to stop forcing a connection where the hardware is incompatible. You must stop shrinking your depth to accommodate others. You do not have to be the emotional archaeologist for every broken person who crosses your path. You have spent your past managing everyone else's reality while suppressing your own. It is finally time to turn that focus inward. Protect your energy, hold your boundaries without guilt, and start witnessing your own emotions with the same intense empathy you have poured into everyone else. Your only job now is to build and protect a life that actually honors your own depth.